In this episode of the Business of E-commerce, I talk with Steve and Carl about how to stay ahead of the curve. This is the Business of E-commerce, episode 81. Today's episode is sponsored by Drip. Drip is the world's first e-commerce CRM and a tool that I personally use for email marketing and automation. Now, if you're ever in an e-commerce store, you need to give Drip a try, and here's why. Drip offers one-click integrations for both Shopify and Magento. There's robust segmentation, personalization, and revenue dashboards to give you an overview of how your automation emails are performing. One of my favorite features of Drip is the Visual Workflow Builder. It gives you a super easy way to build out your automation rules visually and see the entire process. It lets you get started quickly, but also build very complex automation rules. It's powerful, but also easy to learn, unlike a lot of email tools that offer the same type of automation. To get a demo of Drip today, you can go head over to drip.com/BOE. That's drip.com/BOE. Now, onto the show. Welcome to the Business of E-commerce, the show that helps e-commerce retailers start, launch, and grow their e-commerce business. I'm your host, Charles Plesky, and I'm here today with Stephen Carl. Stephen is the founder of Needle Movement, an e-commerce agency where he advises retail brands on how to achieve sustainable digital growth and profitability. I asked Stephen on the show today to talk about how you can stay ahead of the curve in the ever-changing landscape of e-commerce. So hey, Stephen, how you doing today?
Hey, Charles. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. So I love the topic. I'm kind of just the strategy around staying ahead of the curve, right? Because you hear a lot of tactics, but kind of the overall strategy. I'm very interested to kind of dig into it. So are you thinking more on the marketing side, or is it more kind of holistic when you kind of talk about that?
I'm thinking holistically. I think with e-commerce, learning is such a huge part of this game because we're now in this accelerated transformative curve where, we have our playbook, and then a year later, it's as if that playbook is not as effective anymore. So, everything's going to change. So how do you do that trend spotting and learning so that you're not surprised? Because I think as an e-commerce company, I hate surprises. I want to, you don't have to be the first person, but you just want to be on that first wave of people that becomes aware of these shifts in strategy and trends. So that's how I got more interested in learning, because I've been in the industry for 20 years. And I used to be able to get by just from going to like Internet Retailer once a year or other conferences, and I'd be good for a few months, But now I've noticed how much things are changing, and just been distilling back like a system of how do we keep on top of things so that we're not just copying other people or FOMOing into strategies, but we're doing the best strategy that's out there.
Yeah, I always like to think of, strategy as, well, first, tactics are like the things you actually do, right? So you're running Facebook ads, this sort of campaign, this is how you target your audience, like very tactical, right? Those tactics. But the strategy is the overall why you're doing that, or does it even make sense for your business? Because it doesn't, maybe Facebook ads are great for one business, but that's not, how you should be doing it for a different business. So I like kind of that concept of, what's the overall strategy, and then let's let's fit the tactics into that, and not the other way around. Because I see what a lot of people do is just have this like random collection of tactics, and when they see a different tactic, hey, let's do that real quick, and it just nothing really fits. It's just this like hodgepodge, right? It doesn't really they don't come together well. But having that overall strategy allows you to kind of link everything together.
Yeah, and I think it's right. It's like you don't want that paper napkin, or I saw this email, let's do this. So I think we can unpack that into, because I know strategy is such an abstract term.
Yeah.
And it just, so how to make that tangible and into, so I mean, I can explain like the system. I think with businesses, our challenge is just that the day-to-day is so overwhelming now that, I'm sure a lot of people are saying, heck, I'd love to think about strategy, but there's 15 hats I'm wearing right now. So how can I do that? But I think a lot of it is just allocating a little bit of time to that learning aspect, and having a system around it. Because our system, we want our system to be more than just answering calls from different vendors who say they have the silver bullet, or reading an article that is, 5 different ways that you can transform your marketing. And then you read it and you're like, that's clickbait. I was tricked. So, how we can really like elevate that learning. So, the system really is, for the pillars, first off, learn about your customers. Second off would be learn about your website performance. The third is learn about the industry, the things that are happening around you. And then it's learn from other people. That we got this glorious thing going on called the hive mind, where everyone's sharing knowledge. So how to take advantage of, all that great intel that you're getting from other people. So those are the 4 basic sets.
So learn about your customers, learn about your site's performance, industry, and learn from other people, right? Those are kind of the 4 main bullet points.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
So when you say, I guess first, right, when you say customers, are you talking about the customer avatar sort of thing?
Or like, I guess it goes into like surveying and how important it is to get to survey your customers and interview them to make sure that you want to have a product that's going to, that you want to know you have the right audience to sell, that you're selling that product to. That's first off. So you want to make sure there's no friction in that relationship, that the audience and the market and the product are fitting well. Then the other aspect of it is that you want to find out problems before they become big problems. So, that's where learning about your customers and who they are, like when customers like a product or a brand, they love being involved in the process. So getting that feedback, it could be a survey. It's also looking at your reviews very closely, really valuing your customer service team so that, that they're not afraid to walk into the room and say, this thing stinks, it's not working, it's not making sense. So how you can empower them. But it's just, you really want to have your pulse on that customer and how they interact with your product and what their motivations are and what benefits. The key thing is the benefits, I think, too, because when you know the main benefit of your product, that's a very easy thing to translate into your copy and your brand persuasion to make them more likely to purchase, to speak to those unconscious objections and encourage them to buy again.
Yeah, I like the idea of having that solid understanding of your customer down to, and I've kind of gone through this exercise before where you even have that avatar and you give them a name, that sort of thing. But just because you see a lot of people say, who do we sell to? And like 18 to 45 males. And like, all right, well, that's not really, that is a segment, but it's like an unreasonably large segment. And sure, you want to shoot for a big number, but it's much better in a lot of cases focusing on, okay, your customer is a, 20 to 30-year-old left-handed fisherman. And if you're a 20 to 30-year-old left-handed fisherman, they should, at that point, you're able to saturate that market. And they would all know about you, and you can actually get to this point of, hey, when they want to buy, a fishing rod or whatever it is, they think of you, right? Because you're the only one that kind of goes after those left-handed fishing rods or whatever it is. And kind of getting so into that market where they almost have to think of you. But the first step, right, is understanding what is that market.
Right. Because that's, and the reason, I like your avatar and the personas, like, I think I've heard before on your show, they're not perfect, but it's something that evolves, that you gain more understanding of it with time. But I think a lot of times just numbers don't really tell the story, because these people, these people are not numbers. Like, they're your customers, they're really important, and their stories are going to influence the strategy. And I always say, I know it sometimes in departments, it can be tough because people have strong opinions. I think the best way to break a tie is to say, well, we just did this survey and I just read 50 comments that are saying the same thing, that this is good or this is bad. So bringing that customer insight can also, it can clarify certain things where, when you're so close to the situation as a company, sometimes you might not see it as well. But when you're getting that feedback from the customers, it normalizes and balances it out.
Yeah, and I think it's not just knowing your customer, but like why are they buying? So, for instance, like a lot of e-commerce sites are gifts. So you're selling to, let's say, a Father's Day gift, right? But you're actually selling to the mother or the children, that sort of thing, and they're buying it for the father. So you might find out, okay, these are gifts for males, but that's actually not our customer. It's actually females buying it as a Father's Day gift, and maybe that's our thing. And the segment is actually how to attract those people buying it for their dad. So you could have things like that where, unless you're really clear on that segment, you could just completely miss that.
Yeah, and I think, and also that the insight you have on these customers coming to your website will also benefit you on other channels.
Yes,
You know,
exactly. Yep.
so it's kind of it. That's your way to get things right before it will optimize your spends because it will improve the way that you're addressing your home team.
Yeah, and it drives everything, right? Like from the copy on the ads to that's one of those strategy type things, right? Where once you kind of nail that and really have that down, it trickles down to every other part on copy from the landing pages, the ads, how you position the products, how you take the photos. Just because, if you're selling to a different demographic, maybe you want to have a different person in the photo or whatever that looks like. Some
Yeah, and
better with a male or a female in the photos.
so I guess a couple other things with feedback is, I mean, a couple of tips is that you can do continual surveys. Like, don't just do a one-off every season, but just find a way to, like, you can do post-purchase surveys and attach them to emails where you ask a few questions. Like one question I like sometimes ask in surveys is, how would you describe this product to a friend, or how would you describe us to a friend? And that tells you the relatable language
Yep.
that they would be using.
Yeah, things like that.
You know,
And that's one of those things you kind of can build up a almost like a bank of them. I've seen people actually feed that into like a Google use like a Zapier to put that in a Google sheet where then you're running through designing ad copy, and then you just have this Google sheet of here's how the past 1,000 customers described our product, and you can start picking out. We see them all in one place, and you start picking out, hey, here are the kind of common words I use. Here's some common language, and you kind of get that insight and doing it that way, right?
correct. Yeah, it's great to use tools like Zapier to make it really, just so you set it up once and then you're good for a few months getting consistent feedback. But a lot of it is just, with having sustainable growth, I like the idea of getting better every month versus expecting explosive growth at certain periods. Like, that's the way like a healthy brand grows. So when you identify your strengths and weaknesses from that customer feedback, then you can take that and then you prioritize your initiatives based on it. Because I think I mean, this segues a little bit into the second one, which is knowing your website performance. But we look at Google Analytics, we look at Shopify's dashboard, BigCommerce, their dashboard, and there are things that we know, but it's just a bunch of numbers, and we can deduce certain things, but we don't get, it gives us some guesses on what's working. But I think when you couple that with the customer data, then you're making more educated guesses.
Okay, so when you say website performance, we're talking numbers on like how conversion rates and how the funnel's performing and clicks
Yep.
to carts, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I think we know. I mean, I think we know a lot of these key performance indicators. Like, of course, revenue is going to be a big one. Net revenue, because net is what you get. Net is the actual money, not gross.
Yep.
I think conversion rate is also an important one because it will tell you how compelling the website is. So, I mean, let's just say your conversion rate is at 1%. There's probably an opportunity, there's probably something that's getting in the way of the performance. I mean, I think the other thing with website statistics that can give you quick insight is what are your best performing channels? Like what channel do people just get, and that it's easy to translate. Because then when you see like, if your email is doing really well, then, I think there's a misconception sometimes that you've hit the ceiling of how well your email can do. Like sometimes if people just are, in media right now, there's so many people just respond. They have different natural habitats. Like some people respond to email a lot. Some people are on Instagram a lot. Some people are watching YouTube. So you want to, so there's with your performing channels, you get an insight into, okay, this is where my brand makes sense to a lot of people and where people get it. Like I can see that tribe that's assembling there, and from there, once you identify that tribe and that strength, a lot of times what companies do is they just put more investment into that. Because isn't it better to invest in something where you're like, I know this is already working and I just want to amplify it versus I don't know, but somebody else told me that this is a great channel.
Yeah, that advice of just do more of what's working.
Yeah.
It works in a lot of cases where you see people saying, I want to grow this and that, and usually the easiest thing is saying, well, what's working now, right? Like, what channels are working today, and not, oh, we have this great new tactics, maybe you should try it. It's just the low hanging fruit almost every time is saying what's working now, and there's very few times we talk to someone and they actually say, you know what, we've reached a ceiling. Like we're spending more than we could, like with 100% invested in this, we can't spend it anymore. We need a new channel. It's almost always, yeah, we could double down, triple down, we could 10x. And unless you're going for a super select market, you could almost always keep doubling indefinitely.
And sometimes it involves just staffing a certain area a little bit more. Like with email marketing, I see that a lot where you might have one rock star who's doing everything on email marketing, but imagine if you had someone that really knew the platform well and could run your automations better. Imagine if like you had a copywriter there that was really speaking to the pain and the benefit that you're giving, or if you had a designer to template things that made it look a little bit more polished. So all these things are just opportunity areas that if it's already working and you see that, then you can boost it up. And the same thing goes for Instagram, where let's just, there's a lot of in one channel, like there can be a lot of different skill sets. And when you're starting out, you're doing everything with as low cost as possible. But when you start seeing a benefit, like with email, there's eye-popping numbers of how much return on investment email makes. I mean, the official stat is 44-1. That's a little optimistic, but let's just say they're totally lying and that number is 12-1. You're still killing it on email. So that's why, like, sometimes I see companies that will spend $10,000 a month on Google ads, but then when it comes time to invest in something like email, they're like, we don't have a budget for that. And, you're probably making more in email than you are in another channel.
Yeah, I like that also because
or making more return on investment.
Drip is actually a sponsor of this week's show, so there you go with email, and that's one of those things. It's very easy to automate the process and really just kind of that's one of those flywheels that you can just get going, and it's slow to build. And your email list, day one might be all of 20 people, and even when it's 1,000 or 10,000, it will grow. But it's this flywheel that you need to, like you said, kind of automate that process and at least just have structure around it, so it's every month just improving and growing, and it's not just this one-time little pop of, hey, we're going to run a like a banner ad or something. I've seen that where like a large ad on a site where you run it for 30 days and then it's over. Or something like email is just something you're just always funneling user into that. The list is growing, and like you said, you can always refine that process, and going from 4 to 5%, once the numbers get big, really make a big difference. So it might seem small when you have a 100-person email list, but when you have a 10,000-person email list, that little percentage really adds up.
Yeah, I see with email marketing, just it's getting so personalized now, where I see now when people purchase that I'm getting these 5-part welcome series that are telling me stories about the founder of the company and are are bringing me into the story of the brands and making me more loyal.
Yeah.
But yeah, email automation is definitely worthwhile. So I guess let's see, in terms of learning system, just to go to that. So we talked about customers, we talked about the website performance. The last two are industry and then people.
Yep.
So with industry, I think how do you get the best industry information? And I think it's a really big challenge because there's a lot of hype and there's a lot of people, there's a lot of great products out there, but you need a holistic approach to really get it together. So, I think with industry, like I love podcasts as sources of information. I think it's a great spot to get case studies and to get a different set of knowledge because it's independent media. It doesn't have as much of a bias. Print media and internet media, I'm a little bit skeptical of sometimes because I think the goal is really to get you to click. It's not going to necessarily solve your problems. So sometimes, I think it's good to keep on track of it. But let's see, some other sources I would say is Twitter. What I typically do with e-commerce is if there's a lot of great voices in the industry, and if I like what they're saying, and Charles, I just followed you a couple of days ago as well because I love some of the insights from the show. But if I see someone that's making some really good points, I want to follow them on Twitter. Because I think with Twitter we hear about all the like tweet storms and all these negative associations. There are some terrible experiences on Twitter, but it's also a great way to get stock, to hear from individuals who are really knowledgeable about the industry. So one example of a Twitter account to follow, and I have no affiliation with him, is Webb Smith, and he runs a newsletter called At 2 p.m. And he was formerly involved with Mies and Main, which is an apparel company that had exponential growth. But he runs this newsletter. I think he says some really smart things, and I follow him on Twitter to hear the updates that he has, on it. So that's just one example where, let's just say you're reading an article in Forbes, and you like what the author's saying. Follow that author, and you'll get a lot of extra insights that weren't necessarily included in the pieces.
And you're talking about following. Are you talking about following folks in the e-commerce industry or in the industry you're selling into, right? So you might be selling into e-commerce, but let's say,
right,
the fisherman example. Would you go through and follow all the, people in that industry of journalists, different outdoors people, that sort of thing?
Yes, you could, because you're looking just to find thought leaders in this space. So for left-handed fishermen, if there's if Lefty Rodriguez is the world renowned, he won the left-handed fisherman competition. I think with learning, there's also this information filter, which you want to put, which is what's the quality of the information they're providing. And I think you can tell oftentimes the quality, and if they're saying things that you're hearing, if they're saying they're making intelligent insights that are ahead of the curve, those are the people that you want to be on, keep on top of. Because if you're not listening to the podcast, if you're not following the Twitter feed, then you're not going to find out about some of these insights.
Yeah.
So
Twitter's an easy one too, where you can follow, like you're saying, like journalists, podcasters, people who put out content, and you typically just hear things. They put in extra things on something like Twitter that maybe, listening to a half-hour, 40-minute podcast, they're doing that every week or so, whatever that is. But they might just say things every day, all day on Twitter, and you get these little like nuggets of information that's the only place where they live, and they just kind of drop them. They're very small. They go away, but just kind of following that flow starts to give you this like directional of where's the industry headed, and is this the new thing, or is this trending down or trending up? And that's a pretty important thing, just to know where things headed, and that allows you to kind of stay current and know the direction of things.
And Yeah, and another important point is to go multi-channel with your learning, because you're going to hear different things from different, like, you're going to learn something new from a podcast that's different from your, from a Twitter feed. I have some some newsletters from e-commerce specialists that, I also get nuggets of wisdom, from. So it all combines that you're going to hear different things in different places, but combined, you're going to have more knowledge built in with it.
Yeah, I like that. Just kind of staying, it allows you to kind of just stay as like at least listening to the conversation, even if you're not
Yeah.
participating, but just being part and listen to that conversation that's happening every day, all day, regardless of whether you're there or not. But you can just now, and things like you were saying, Twitter or podcasts, you can just, be almost like eavesdropping into what's going on. And you don't need to be part of it necessarily because not everyone wants to be or has time, but at least you can be knowledgeable about what other folks are saying. So that's a great one. And then last, when you say learn from other people,
So that's
yeah.
mhm.
So what's that?
So that would be, I think at companies, the first step is it's a good idea to have outside of your company a couple of people that are advisory, and this could be, it's just someone that is going to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly, because I think in e-commerce sometimes where, we can, there's just a lot of pride, and there's a lot of pride at stake. And in your culture, it's like it's very important to have objectivity, that if something is working, great, but if something is not working, then what's great about the web is you can always change it. You don't have to stay in any, especially smaller to mid-sized businesses. You're slow, you're nimble, you have only a few decision makers. So, so that having advisors outside of the company is very important. But it has to be someone that's going to tell you the truth, and that you're gonna that and that you know you respect their opinion enough, to deliver that. And it can't be a homer either. If you can't be, it's like, I don't know if someone's spouse or best friend is fit for that role, because that introduces bias into the equation. But because I think, we as e-commerce owners, we all want the truth. Like, the truth is something that, like, we whatever's getting in the way of our sales, or whatever will lead us to the next horizon, we want to know about it. And the sooner we find out about it, the sooner we can take it to that level. So a lot of times, that having that outside body of an advisor or two, that just someone that's independent, that you can bounce off ideas, can be really valuable, because they're just, and a lot of times, like, decisions are not, they happen over time. Like, you and I could have a conversation about, what we're going to invest in, our branding, and, maybe today we're not going to be on the same page, but we just have a dialogue about it, and we see how things are going over time. And, we can adapt and adjust the strategy. And I think that's what having that objective outside body that's going to, tell you things. So that's one part of learning from other people. I think the other part is really just an extension of getting to know people inside the industry, having, partnering with other companies that are similarly situated. We have this impression that everyone's our competitor, but a lot of times there's really not much competitive material. So, if you have a few companies that, you can reach out to for partnerships, a lot of that can just be intellectual brainstorming, where every quarter you just have a call and you're like, hey, what did you hear? What did you hear? And odds are you're going to find out a lot more than if you're sitting at your desk searching for it. And I think the good thing is, when you talk to companies and people in the, that have gone through some of the implementations, like, let's just say you're exploring drip, you want to hear from people those success stories, and you want to hear, what people have, because those success stories also are going to help you on day one, because then you're going to have a game plan, to, it's not just let's do email marketing. It's, here's 15 email marketing campaigns that we can automate that were successful for a couple of other businesses that I've spoken to. So that it's that high, it's networking with people and getting that real insight that comes from interacting.
Yeah, I've always thought of it as this, how you measure those people, because a lot of people say, yeah, people I talk to, but it's really, and there's a gradient, right? Where when you talk to that person and they say, how's it going? The people you don't know, that you're not familiar with, you have this like thing you kind of, when you meet someone at a network event, great, we're killing it, we're crushing it, we're growing. Like,
right.
You have this, basically, if you meet someone at an event, there's like this canned thing that everyone says on how fantastic everything is. And then depending on how close you are with that person, it kind of becomes a scale of, well, we're having this challenge. Do you have any, like, there's that person, then all the way to the awful, let me tell you about the 10 bad things that happened. Let me and you just dig into them and you kind of just like unleash on that. Kind of like are able to like unload on that person and have them give you some feedback. So
and it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we all like,
yeah, go on.
I was going to say, like, I think we both see this in our businesses. Like I see with Needle Movement that I first came in a few years ago thinking of it as a marketing agency, but then I saw this real need for digital strategy and just that people need to solve problems. And it's not just it's not just, am I going to do Facebook ads or not? That's what the media tells you, but it's, gosh, I have all these other questions on my business. And also I can't do this on my own, or my company can't. I need to bring in partners, like, people that are going to, help me, or like, and we were talking about how other companies, how a lot of times like companies can just partner together and gain mutual benefits in terms of promoting themselves and exposing themselves to different audiences.
Yeah, even just something simple like cross promotion of content, blog swapping. There's usually this like warming up phase, right? Where there's like same thing, the people you meet at the event, hey, we're doing great, that sort of thing. But then as you kind of start building that partnership, you start saying, hey, we could both benefit from this. And it allows you to start talking a little more on, hey, we're also trying to scale our, LinkedIn presence. Great, we can put your account, comment, add you to some of our posts. So it allows you to, kind of open up to that person a little bit and say, here's what we're trying to do. And then sometimes they can actually help you with that. Then the other thing I've been exploring more is even like formal like coaching arrangements where that person is actually, it's not, hey, how you doing? It's, hey, what are your challenges right now? Where the goal of that is to just have someone to you tell what's going wrong, basically. Share some wins, but the majority of here's what I'm working on, here's what's not working, what can I do better, that sort of thing, and just having someone there to just give all of that to, and not have to have that facade all the time of we're doing great and I know right. All the answers and I'm the master of the universe. So I like that having people like that around.
Yeah, I think mistakes are awesome in our business because when we can uncover them, we can fix them. Like the worst thing is a mistake that you're not aware of that's hurting your business. So it's just how to get, how to extrapolate that. And I think a lot of it is just, it's like a lot of times it's no one did anything wrong. It's just if we can do it better, it's not because someone did something wrong. And no one should ever feel that way. Like everyone screws up. It's something on teams. Nobody is perfect, but it's just kind of looking at ideas freshly every month or so and saying, all right, we're doing this now. Like, not everything's perfect or and I think it's that perfection that gets in the way sometimes, because I think that time you spend trying to bring that facade of perfection, that's time that you could be troubleshooting and problem solving. And that's what's going to get you to the next place, not the idea of perfection.
Yeah, I like the idea too of having the outside set of eyes, just because, easy example, the design of the site, right? Where you might have implemented it 4 years ago, you worked with a designer, you hit it out of the park, you loved it, that sort of thing. But over time, that starts to look old. But it's one of those things where to you, it's the same design, right? Nothing's actually changed. But to the outside world, they actually look and go, you're using Flash on your website, sort of thing.
Right.
Maybe stop doing that. Like,
there's blinking purple text.
yeah, just blinking text.
It looked great. It was the trend of the times. But
yeah, in the '90s that was fantastic, but it's
right.
2019. Let's have a little, let's sit you down and talk. Like, you need to look at that again. So it's one of those things that outside perspective gives you that, right? Because you might, unless you follow design blogs and you have an eye for design, you might think that blinking text and that, big Flash site is still fantastic. But, and I'm obviously joking here, but things like that even, right? Where just little things, the industry and the world changes out from under you. So even if it was good, you need someone to be looking at it from the outside to let you know, maybe it's not good anymore. And having that person that's not in the day-to-day definitely helps with that.
Yeah, and it can be like you can have a voting process in your head. Like someone could say this isn't right, and you could say I'm going to do it this way anyway. Like I think as business leaders, oftentimes you're going to be right about that. But I think having that extra feedback is typically going to help in the long run.
It's a data point, right? Where think of you're the captain of the ship, and there's different people on the ship giving you. There's people in the engine room.
Yeah, and you make the decisions.
Yep. Yes.
So it's you're not threatening your decision-making ability getting that outside feedback.
And you need that feedback, right? Because as you're the captain of the ship, right, you don't know what's going on in the engine room. You don't know what's going on in other parts of the ship. You just can't see them necessarily because you're focused on, where the ship's going and those sort of things. So you need that feedback in there because from your position, you might not be naturally getting it at all times.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I think that's super helpful. So I love the idea of like setting up a system to learn better. I guess, what would be the word for this? Like
I don't know. It's like accelerated
e-commerce
learning, but it's something like that. It's e-commerce university, whatever, it's, but we don't have this formalized system. So we're just picking off knowledge bombs here and there and these aha moments. So it's just trying to systematize it a little bit more. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, and I think in the long run, you need this process, right? Because getting started, I feel like at the beginning, and a lot of people do this, they buy a course. It's kind of a little kit. You just implement, hey, here are the 10 steps of launching an e-commerce site. And it's actually a good way to get started. I always kind of say, you know what, it's better than wandering around on your own, but you need almost, here are the 10 steps. But then once you actually do those, if you have any success, you need to be able to say, okay, in 12 months, everything has this like lifespan where it's going to end and you need to kind of grow and you're going to grow out of it. So you need the system, this like 2.0 version of that of, okay, I got to where I am, but that's not going to get me where I want to go. So now I need to build some sort of process around where I want to get to.
Right. Because that change is coming in the future. So you're just anticipating that so that it's just the advantage of knowing things before your competitors is very compelling, and gives you, will give your business advantages as well. It's just having a well-rounded knowledge set and making informed, more, how you can make your decision-making more informed. I think that's because you always want to pick from good options, you don't want to like be throwing a Hail Mary pass on things, or, if it's just when you're making a decision, it's like, why are you doing it, and how confident are you in it?
I like that. Cool. All right. Yeah, I think so I think let's just one more time. Customers, web performance, industries, and learning from other people. Kind of the 4 main points. So I'll definitely put those in the show notes. Anything else if people want to kind of learn more about you, learn what you're doing at the agency, where can they find more?
Yes. So you can visit needlemovement.com. And there you'll have a couple of options. So for the podcast, we'll be offering some growth strategy calls. And that's something you can sign up for. And this is just something you should know about me is I hate sales, thinly veiled sales approaches. So I'm always fascinated about e-commerce and people's experiences. So it's really just a conversation, and, we'll see if there's some things from my experience of how I can help inform yours. And then I also have there's an email sign up option as well. And along with that, like I periodically send newsletters that inform my audience of things that are happening right now in e-commerce to keep the entire community ahead of the curve.
I like that. Cool. Yeah, people should definitely sign up for that. I love the idea of offering even a free call just to chat, right? Because it's one of those things where even if it's not a great fit, they're going to learn a little something, and everyone benefits usually from those. So people should definitely check that out, and I will link to that in the show notes. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Charles. Thanks for having me.